Chapter 10. Talking with your body. Hand signals are important when people cannot hear each other or do not want to be heard. Can you recognize whether a stranger is happy or unhappy? There is one secret language that everyone speaks, but not everyone understands. Body language. Body language is all the communication in a conversation except the actual words you use. There are two different kinds of body language. Body language that we can control and body language that we cannot control. Uncontrolled body language. We are born with body language that we cannot control. It shows how we feel. For example, blind children do not learn to smile by seeing someone else smile. Although they never see anyone smile, they still do it. All humans smile. In the same way, deaf children laugh, although they never hear anyone else laughing. It is easiest to read the body language of children. When they are tired, sad, or happy, their bodies show it immediately. As children get older, they try to control their body language. Adults control theirs for many reasons. They may not want other people to think they are afraid when they speak in front of a group. They may not want to show that they are bored because they want to be polite. But people cannot always control themselves. The human body has many ways to give messages about how we feel. Many of these messages come from emotions like love, anger, and jealousy. Often, our body's messages are not the same as the ones we give through our speech. We may give a polite yes, while showing with a shake of our head and crossed arms our true feelings no. These messages teach us a lot about what people really mean. Sometimes they also help us understand when other people are lying, because their words do not match their body language. But body language is different all around the world. How many of the kinds of body language shown on the next page do you use? Do they have the same meaning? Body language you control. The second kind of body language is the kind we can control. We may smile when we are happy, but a smile can also give other kinds of messages. It may show that we believe something or that we agree. It may let someone know that they are doing a good job. And we use many different kinds of smile to greet someone or to call attention to ourselves in a shop or restaurant. But people do not just smile with their lips. We use our whole face to show real pleasure. The lines around our eyes move too. People sometimes smile with their lips, but not with their eyes when they are just being polite. People use body language to give many kinds of orders. A police officer uses body language to give directions to traffic. Sports teams use body language to tell team members how to play. They can use hand signals that the other team cannot understand. In Hong Kong, jewelry traders discuss the price of special jewels or stones by putting their hands under a newspaper or blanket. They pull on each other's fingers to agree a price and use code words to say if the price is in the hundreds or thousands. Hand signals are important when people cannot hear each other or do not want to be heard. Police and soldiers use hand signals to give secret commands. Small radios have made some of these signals less important, but one group of people still uses hand signals every day: the deaf. American Sign Language. Martha's Vineyard is an island on the east coast of the United States. For almost 200 years, there was a small population on the island, and people often married within the same families. But many of these people had a medical problem that made them and their children deaf. By the late 1800s, there were 20 times as many deaf people on Martha's Vineyard as in most other places in the world. These deaf people had no problem communicating. They developed their own sign language for everyday use, and most people on Martha's Vineyard used it. Even hearing people used it to communicate with other hearing people. Children learnt it to communicate behind their teachers' backs in class. In 1817, after learning sign language in France, a group of teachers opened a school for the deaf in Hartford, Connecticut, in the United States. Many deaf students from Martha's Vineyard went there to learn, but they also took their own sign language with them. The two languages mixed, and the new language was soon called American Sign Language. American Sign Language has two parts: body language symbols, which are like a code, and alphabet symbols that are like a cipher. Some signs are easy to understand, like pointing to yourself with the first finger of your right hand to show I, or using your open right hand to show my. Some other signs are easy to understand when they are explained. The use of your right hand to brush pretend snow off your left shoulder means Canadian. Other signs just need to be memorized. But although American Sign Language is used everywhere in North America, people in other English-speaking countries like Britain do not understand it. They use their own signs. There is no international sign language. Children and animals. At what age can someone start to learn sign language? Babies cannot talk before a certain age. Their mouths, throats, and tongues are not ready. But in the 1980s, a university student noticed his deaf friends communicating with their babies in sign. The man found that these babies learned to communicate with their parents much earlier than hearing children. They use simple hand signs for things that they wanted to have or do. The man's own child was not deaf, but he tried it. He found that the baby could quickly learn to make simple signs. Now many people use sign language with their hearing babies. The signs are for things like hat, toy, milk, sleep, and food. Animals cannot talk for the same reason that babies cannot. Their mouths, throats, and tongues are not the right shapes. Also, many animals do not have lips. Scientists wondered if animals could learn to use signs to explain what they wanted. There have been many tests. Some scientists say the tests prove animals can learn to speak in signs, but other people disagree and say the scientists have not proved anything. Secret handshakes. The Masons, also called the Freemasons, are part of a large international group of men who like to share secrets, help each other, and help others. The Masons is an old organization. It started around the 1700s, and perhaps as early as 400 years earlier. Masons give themselves special names and greet each other with secret signals and handshakes. Chapter 11. Lost Words. He decided to discover the meaning of hieroglyphics and spent the next 18 years studying them. All languages are secret codes for people who cannot understand them. In most cases, it is easy to learn other languages. There is no reason for them to be secret at all. You can go to the library, or take classes, or visit another country and learn. But some languages are simply lost. The speakers and writers of those languages have all died, and there is no record of how the languages sounded or what the writings mean. Egyptian hieroglyphics. One of the oldest and most famous of these languages is Egyptian hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics is an unusual kind of writing. It includes 6,000 different symbols. Some symbols are quite simple. A picture of a knife means knife or cut. Some are detailed pictures of gods, people, and animals. But for 1400 years, no one could begin to guess how to read these strange symbols, or even what they sounded like. After 1798, the situation changed. The French leader Napoleon Bonaparte took his army to Egypt. He also took 167 scientists with him. The scientists wanted to study Egypt's art and old buildings, and to try to understand Egypt's past and its language. Later that year, soldiers found a large piece of black stone near the Egyptian town of Rosetta. The 762-kilogram stone was part of a building that the soldiers were taking down. On the stone was a message in 3 languages, including hieroglyphics. The scientists quickly decided that the stone was the clue they were looking for. If they could understand one of the languages, they might be able to understand hieroglyphics. One of the languages was easy to understand. It was Old Greek. Scientists soon understood the message. It was written in 196 BC and talked about the new leader of Egypt, a 13-year-old boy named Ptolemy V Epiphanes. The other language was Demotic. Demotic is Old Egyptian writing that is simpler to read and write than hieroglyphics, but it was still not understood. The French scientists made paper copies of the Rosetta Stone's writings and sent them to other scientists in Europe. But many years passed before anyone could understand how to read hieroglyphics. The answer did not come from a famous scientist. A young Frenchman, Jean-François Champollion, discovered the secret. As a young boy, Champollion was very interested in languages. He learned Arabic, Chinese, Chaldean, Hebrew, and Syriac. He later learned Coptic, Ethiopic, Sanskrit, Zend, Pahlavi, and Persian. All these languages helped him to understand how a lost language like Egyptian hieroglyphics might work. One day, a famous scientist came to his school. The scientist had visited Egypt, and Champollion had learnt everything he could about Egypt. He had many questions for the scientist. Finally, the scientist laughed. "Who went to Egypt, you or me?" The scientist thought that Champollion was a great student and later helped him study at a better school. When Champollion was 18 years old, he saw a copy of the Rosetta Stone. he decided to discover the meaning of hieroglyphics and spent the next 18 years studying them. People had different ideas about what hieroglyphics might mean. Some people thought each symbol was a different word. Some people thought that the symbols were only pretty pictures, decorations. Some thought that the different symbols were letters of an Egyptian alphabet. Another problem was the direction of the sentences. The sentences sometimes went from left to right, and sometimes from right to left. But there was one clue. The animal heads always faced the start of each sentence. Champollion knew that written Hebrew and Arabic texts do not include the A, E, I, O, or U sounds. Sometimes they are also not included in written English. For example, we write the short form RD for road, but it would be confusing if we shortened every word in this way. Two letters like BT could represent a number of words, including beat, boat, and boot. Champollion decided that hieroglyphics worked the same way, but that they used a symbol at the start of the sentence to explain what it was about. For example, if the BT word was boat, the first symbol might be about water. Champollion thought about these different ideas and looked at more and more examples of hieroglyphics. He found that sometimes symbols were in a little box. Champollion guessed that these symbols might stand for the name of a king or queen. Champollion found characters in the boxes that represented the sounds for RMSS and KLPDR. When he guessed the other letters, he had the names of an Egyptian king and queen, Ramses and Cleopatra. This told Champollion that Egyptian hieroglyphics were made up of sounds and were not just pictures of ideas. Champollion jumped up from his desk and ran across town to see his brother. "I have done it!" he shouted. Then he fell down and did not get out of bed for 8 days. The lost language of the Egyptians could finally be read and heard again. Cuneiform. Cuneiform was another language that was lost for thousands of years. It was first used more than 5,000 years ago and was popular for about 3,000 years. It was used by the people who lived in the area around modern Iraq. These people did not use paper to write on. Instead, they used clay. If the message was not important, the clay could be put in water and used again. If the message was important, the clay could be baked hard. Then it lasted for centuries. Often, clay messages were baked by accident. When an enemy army attacked, it often burned down a city. The clay messages in the houses and buildings were baked in the fires. After that, the messages might be buried in the desert sands for hundreds or thousands of years. Cuneiform was written with a small pointed stick. A writer quickly made small marks in the wet clay. Like Egyptian hieroglyphics, cuneiform began as pictures of things that people wanted to buy and sell. The first pictures were of animals and food. A trader drew a picture of a cow on one clay disc and used it like money. If there were 5 cows, he made 5 clay discs. Later, cuneiform writers developed numbers. Instead of 5 discs for cows, the trader could use 1 disc for cows and 1 disc with the number 5 on it. Eventually, traders made 1 disc with the number 5 and a cow on it and the discs became coins. These pictures became simpler as people had to write them faster. In time, it became very hard to recognize the old pictures. Although it was an important language for 3,000 years, cuneiform became a lost language that no one could read. Then, in 1835, a British soldier, Henry Rawlinson, found some writing on a rock at Behustan in Persia, now in Iraq. The writing had been cut into the stone during the time of King Darius I. He was the king of Persia from 522 to 486 BC. Like the Rosetta Stone, the same texts were written in 3 languages: Old Persian, Babylonian cuneiform, and Elamite. Rawlinson spoke Persian and was able to translate the least difficult text, Old Persian, first. It told the story of King Darius. After that, Rawlinson began the hard work of deciphering the cuneiform. By 1851, he could read 200 cuneiform signs. Cuneiform is no longer a lost language, and we can understand a lot about daily life 2,500 years ago. Chapter 12. Human Nature. In the history of secret codes and ciphers, people have often missed finding clues or solving problems for personal reasons. Ciphers and codes are only as good as the people who use them. They have been broken because people have been careless, or because spies have been clever. Mata Hari was a Dutch spy who worked for the Germans during World War I. But she made a mistake and sent information to them using an old cipher. The French were able to understand the message, so the Germans were angry and punished her. They sent her a message in another cipher that they knew the French could read. The message gave away Mata Hari's name. The French government found and shot her. Stealing secrets. Thieves find it easy to steal information from people's computers or banks because people are less careful about their secret codes than they are about the locks on their doors. For example, many people write down their code words and keep them in their wallets or on their desks. In other cases, thieves use social engineering. They use people's foolishness and fears to get the secrets they want. For example, a thief may telephone you and say there is a problem with your computer or bank. If you agree to give them your secret word or other information, you can lose a lot of money quickly and easily. Thieves even go through people's rubbish to look for letters from banks or information about bank cards. People are now more careful with information about their secret codes and bank information, but thieves still find new ways to steal what they want. Mistakes. In the history of secret codes and ciphers, people have often missed finding clues or solving problems for personal reasons. In the 1920s, the Americans learned about Japanese codes by breaking into their government office in New York and photographing their code book. During World War II, Germans used the effective Enigma cipher to keep their secrets, but they shared their plans with Japanese officials and politicians, who then talked about the German plans. Because the British and Americans could break the less difficult Japanese codes and ciphers, they had a better idea of what the Germans were doing. Human nature means that people make mistakes for many reasons. or they may be punished for their success. Joseph J. Rockefeller was the World War II cipher breaker who thought the Japanese were going to attack Midway Island. His boss thought that they were going to attack Alaska. Rockefeller was right and found a way to prove it by sending a false message. But his boss was jealous, and Rockefeller never worked in codes and ciphers again. The Mayan glyphs. In the 16th and 17th centuries, Spanish soldiers went to the New World for gold. They found it in the area of Mexico and Central America. They took guns, alcohol, the Christian religion, and disease with them. The Mayan people tried to fight against the Spanish, but they were not strong enough. The Spanish found a rich society. Mayans had built great cities and developed a written language around 100 BC. These cities lasted until the Spanish arrived. The Mayan people had beautiful art and great writings which told their history and their stories. They also had beautiful writing, among the most beautiful in the world, but it was almost completely lost. Other languages, like Egyptian hieroglyphics, were lost because people just stopped using them. But Mayan glyphs were lost because the Spanish did not like them. One man especially wanted to get rid of them, a religious leader called Diego de Landa. De Landa hated Mayan glyphs. He wanted to bring the Christian religion to the people of the Americas. He did not understand the glyphs and thought that their pictures of Mayan gods would stop the Mayan people from accepting Christianity. He ordered the Spanish soldiers to destroy all Mayan books and pictures. No one knows how many books were burned, but we do know that only 3 are left today. Mayan writing has hundreds of different signs or glyphs in the form of humans, animals, gods, and everyday tools. De Landa destroyed much of Mayan language and art, but he also helped to save it. In 1566, he wrote a book about his time in Latin America and thought he should say something about the language. He decided to ask some of the Mayan people to write down their alphabet. In fact, the Mayans did not have an alphabet. They simply wrote the pictures that they used for each of the sounds that he said. If someone asked you for the picture for the English letter C, you might misunderstand and draw a C. Slowly the Mayan language was lost. But fortunately, it was not just kept in books. The Mayan people left their writing on stone buildings. Many foreigners knew that there were lost cities in Central America, and 2 travellers, John Lloyd Stephens and Frederick Catherwood, visited some of them in 1839. Catherwood made drawings and paintings of the ruins they found, and people became very interested in Mayan writing. In the 1920s, John Eric Thompson collected and organized thousands of Mayan symbols. Thompson was a specialist in the Mayan symbols, but he had his own ideas about what they meant. He fought with anyone who disagreed. Some people think that his ideas slowed learning about Mayan writing for 40 years. The Russian scientist Yuri Konorosov finally found a way to read the Mayan texts using De Landa's alphabet writing. For a long time, Thompson and the Americans did not believe him, simply because they did not like Russians. The largest codes. Is there intelligent life in other worlds? Are there living beings like people, or are they completely different? If they are, what are they like? What will they say to us? These are questions that scientists have tried to answer for more than 40 years. In 1959, two scientists at Cornell University explained how radio waves could be sent between the stars. This made people think. Were there scientific societies in other worlds sending radio messages? In 1960, a scientist called Frank Drake used a radio telescope to listen for signs from another world. He listened for several weeks. He did not find anything, but others were interested in the idea. More and more scientists began looking for life among the stars. One group uses people's home computers to help examine information collected by radio telescopes. When you are not working on your computer, a program can use it to look for signals that could be messages. Other scientists send out messages for people from other worlds to hear. What do scientists expect to find? People from another world are not likely to speak English or any other known language. They may send out radio waves. If the signals are regular and repeated, we will know that someone from another world is trying to communicate. In addition to radio wave signals, scientists on Earth have tried to send another kind of code on a spaceship. The Voyager spaceship message is on a 30-centimetre metal disc. The disc contains sounds and pictures that show different kinds of life on Earth. There are 115 pictures and many sounds from nature. These include sounds of the ocean, different kinds of weather, birds and other animals. There is music from different countries and from different times through history. There are also greetings in 55 languages. Some of the languages are 6,000 years old. But you should not expect to hear from another world too soon. It will take 40,000 years for Voyager to get close to another world that might contain life. By then, perhaps no one will remember the message that we sent or the languages that we now speak. Will we use our intelligence to fight wars or make friends? The important question is whether human nature will make people want to keep secrets or share ideas. The history of secret codes and ciphers shows how clever people can be at making secret codes and ciphers and at breaking them. It is unlikely that anyone will ever develop the perfect secret code or cipher that no one can break. It may take a long time and be very difficult, but it will be broken. Everyone loves to know a secret.